Hi, I'm Batsa and I've been playing a lot of Pax Dei since it came out in early access. Today I'm going to cover combat and the various weapon types we have in the game. As you probably know, the game has received a lot of criticism regarding the state of its combat, because it is very basic and unpolished compared to many other MMOs. There's one weapon special ability on 30 seconds cooldown and that's pretty much it. Someone pointed out in one of my recent streams while running a dungeon that the combat doesn't look fun or engaging and asked if I enjoy it or hope that it will become better in the future. I mostly agree with this statement, but I personally don't mind the combat as it stands now. It is better than it was in the previous iteration before the Proving Grounds update, and it will continue to improve. But I don't believe that Pax Dei's combat will ever reach the fluidity, feel and responsiveness of most of the big MMOs on the market now. The important thing for me is that I'm not getting bored or frustrated most of the time when engaging in combat. Not when doing solo content and not when doing the dungeons in a group. The only part I didn't like and plodded through is when it was possible to solo difficult content with Mesmerize Fireball. I really got tired of it in the end. But it's not possible to do that anymore as the Fire Dot breaks the Mesmerize now. And I do not think that combat is always the most important part of an MMO. Not every one of them should have combat as its main focus. And yes, it can get buggy and glitchy sometimes. Just look at this footage from a friendly PvP event we had when we could build in Lioness. Those damage numbers popping up is not me hitting my opponent, it's him hitting me. And we have sometimes unresponsive enemies that don't engage in combat and don't fight back, or we receive damage from invisible and unreachable sources and the only way to fix it is to log out and log back in. But it is the nature of early access. I expect those bugs to be fixed in the future. Before I continue, I want to mention, like I always do in my videos, that the information I present is accurate as of November 2024, and it can and will change several times in the future, especially for combat. Okay, let's go back to the weapons. So which weapons and combat skills do we have? Let's open my combat skills and check them out. There are one-handed axes, though they were temporarily removed from the game and will come back in the future after rework. We have a blocking skill, which all weapons can do, but shields obviously do a better job at that. We have the bows, the only ranged weapon currently present in the game. The great axes, great maws and great swords are all two-handed weapons. Hand spears are the one-handed spears, pole arms are the two-handed ones, and we have one-handed maces and swords as well. We do have one offensive spell, the Fireball, but magic is not a part of the combat skills. I covered all the spells we currently have access to in the previous video. And we can punch and kick enemies as well, though there isn't an unarmed combat skill. It's a good way to deal with those pesky foxes and badgers though. So what happens when you level your weapon skills and the block skill? Well, as you may expect, they deal more damage and can block better. I have all the melee and block skills at 41, and when I mouse over a weapon, I see the light blue numbers indicating its attack and block value. But if I hold Alt while doing that, I can see that the numbers change to white, and they display the base attack and block values of that weapon, disregarding the weapon skill. So you can see that max blocking skill doubles the block value, and getting max level in the weapon skill increases the damage by less than twice. If I go to the weaponsmithing bench and check the great maws for example, I can see that the lower tier weapons get a higher percent of additional damage when leveling the skill. The heavy iron great maw went from 13 to 24, the basic one from 17 to 27, and the crackling maul, or the boop stick as we refer to it in our clan, had its damage increased from 22 to 32. The axes and swords do slash damage, the maces do blunt damage, and the spears and bows do piercing damage. When dealing damage, the enemy's resistance to that type of damage is taken into account for the calculation of the damage amount it received. But you shouldn't worry about that too much, as almost every NPC has an equal amount of resistance to the three physical damage types. The only exceptions are deer and deer stags, they have minus 50 piercing resistance. I assume it's because they are intended to be one-shot even by new players with the basic bow and no experience in the bow skill. The deer have 8 health points and the deer stag has 9. You do 8 damage with a fully drawn basic bow and a wooden arrow, so the deer can be one-shot straight away, and for the stag you need a slightly better bow, or arrows, or a higher skill level to one-shot him. Before I demonstrate all the different melee weapons and the special abilities, let's talk about block and bows first. Let's start with block. When you hold the right click while having a shield or weapon equipped, you start to block. While doing that, you will face the same direction while moving. It's very good for repositioning yourself exactly where you want to be. When receiving a hit while blocking, the damage calculation will take into account the strength of the hit, the block value of your weapon or shield, and your defense value for the type of damage received, piercing, slash or blunt. The hit will drain your stamina before it will damage your health, but with a strong enough hit, your health will go down as well, even if you still have some stamina left. The stamina did regenerate while blocking in the previous patch, so to level block I started fighting a boar, placed my phone at the right mouse button and went AFK. I guess I could use a macro, but putting weight on the mouse button worked as well. Now the stamina doesn't regenerate while blocking, so you can't cheese level in the block skill anymore. But at least the durability of the shields was increased significantly. Before the latest patch, the stronger mobs in dungeons removed like 5% of the durability of your shield with each hit. It was pretty insane. Now the shields are much sturdier, and you need to bring only one, even for a long dungeon run, where you'd be the one pulling aggro. I do hope that the developers will make the best shield currently available. The layered buckler a bit bigger, it looks rather small. The special ability of the shield is Shield Bash 1. It stuns all enemies hit for 2 seconds. There are magical shields that have a Shield Bash 2 or 3. It has a shorter cooldown and it generates more aggro, but the stun duration is still 2 seconds. The shield special ability, like any weapon special ability, can't be used for the first 10 seconds when you equip the shield or weapon. You used to be able to use it immediately in the previous patch. And the shield bash had a 24-second cooldown, unlike the weapon special abilities, which have 30. Let's go back to the bows for a bit. They are good currently for only 2 things: killing deer and pulling enemies in dungeons. And you don't even need the better bows or arrows to do it. You can one-shot the deer with any type of bow and arrow, like I said, and you don't even need to hit the enemies in the dungeons to pull them, just shoot at their general direction. So if you enjoy playing the hunter archetype in other MMOs, you can't do it in Pax Dei, except roleplaying, I guess. While trying to kill enemies with a bow, anything stronger than a boar will be a problem. They don't even have a special ability, not yet at least. When attacking with a bow, you'll need to keep running away to avoid being hit, and it will take you much longer to kill enemies compared to the melee weapons, even with the best bow and arrows and maxed out bow skill. You can see me fighting with this direwolf not very successfully, and I switched to the mace to finish him off. The arrows also don't pierce through enemies and will damage only one enemy at a time. They do more damage now if you pull out the string more before releasing the arrow. The highest level bow you can craft, the war bow, is not the strongest, as its piercing value is too low, and the strongest bow is currently the curved one. It is a bit stronger than hung bow as well. I know that balance should come later in game development, but come on mainframe, it's just one number that you need to change for the war bow. You can do that. Let's check out every type of a melee weapon in combat. For that, I venture into the wolf cave. These poor doggos, I've been massacring them for ages. Look at how many wolf carcasses I had in my redeeming queue. I'll bring a character with no weapon experience and use lower tier weapons for fighting the wolves, so the fights will be longer and I can properly show how the weapons work. Though this will prolong the suffering of the wolves, unfortunately. I'll still bring the best gear and food though, I don't want my character to die while making this video. Before I venture into the wolf cave, let's see for a second how the attacks look with melee weapons. When I attack with a weapon, it moves me forward if there's no enemy right in front of me. This is a new thing for the recent patch. The two-handed weapons do more damage than the one-handed ones, as you might expect, but they do attack slightly slower. Still, the DPS, damage per second, of the two-handed weapons is higher than those of the one-handed ones, when comparing items of the same tier and the same type. You can see that with this great axe, I do a swing from right to left in a wide arc, then from left to right, and after that there's an overhead slash. And I go back to the right to left slash to repeat these 3 attacks. If I stop a bit before attacking again, I'll do the right to left slash first, even though it might not have been the next one in the queue before I stopped attacking. All weapons behave like this. They have 2 or 3 regular attacks in a similar pattern, and the next one is of a different pattern, which also deals a lot more damage. Even when fighting unarmed, you do 2 punches and a kick in a rotation. Let's enter the wolf cave. It's pretty dark in here, so I'll try to fight in the better lighted areas. As you can see, the axe swing attacks hit all enemies, and the overhead attack hits in a smaller area, but it does a lot more damage. For every weapon hit that has a narrow area of effect, you can try to position yourself to try to hit as many enemies as possible. You can experiment with this. Try attacking between two enemies, for example. You might hit both of them, though you still might only hit one or miss the attack completely. The special attack of the two-handed axes is Cleave. You perform a swing, do a full 360 and do another swing. This ability puts a debuff on the target, it lowers the physical resistance of the enemies for 15 seconds so they take more damage. One-handed axes had a similar special ability. Let's rewatch this. You can see that I was hitting the wolves for 10 and 11 damage. The Cleave did 31 and 33 damage and applied the debuff. So the second swing of it did 36 or 39 damage. And the normal hits after the special attack did 12 or 13 damage. The Growler took less damage than the Wolves because it has a high resistance to physical damage. When you perform a special attack, your next normal attack will be the first in the 3 or 4 normal attack cycle. So for example, it is better to do the special attack with a Great Axe right after the overhead attack to maximize the damage output. Otherwise you may end up doing 4 regular swings in a row, separated by the Cleave ability. The two-handed mace, or the boop stick, is the weapon of choice for many of us who are doing the dungeons in the current patch. As you can see, it does 2 normal attacks in a white cone, and then there's an overhead smash which does more damage, also in a big radius. The two-handed mace special attack is Pound, which stuns the enemies for 2 seconds, does a lot of damage and has a large AoE as well. Stun is very useful in dungeons. If several people are staggering the Pound ability, the enemies can be stunned for quite some time and no one in the party will be hit by their attacks. The one-handed mace is similar to the two-handed version. It performs 3 normal attacks in a cone and the 4th one deals more damage. The special ability of the one-handed mace is Slam, which is identical to Pound. But as you can see, all the attacks deal a lot less damage than its two-handed cousin. We had 2 types of two-handed swords before the Proving Grounds patch, but one of them was removed. And we have only one currently. It's also pretty small, as you can see. The sword does 3 different swings that do the same amount of damage, and the white swipe that does more damage on the 4th attack. The special ability of the sword is called Whirl, and it says that it swipes all nearby enemies, but you can see that it is actually more of a forward poke, which is similar to the special ability of the spears, which I'm going to show in a bit. And here's the small tip that's not related to combat. When you're skinning animals, you need to wait like half a second between the skins. Otherwise you may get experience only for one animal, as you can see with these last 2 wolves I skinned. The one-handed sword is similar to the two-handed one, but every 4th ability that hits harder is made in a narrow cone, not a wide arc. The special ability is called Swipe, but again, as you can see, it's more of a forward thrust. The one-handed spear has fast attacks, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. Both the one and the two-handed spears were the weapon of choice for many players in the previous patch, mostly because they were the cheapest weapons to make and they were quite good, but the two-handed mace is the flavor of the month currently. You can see that the attack is performed in a narrow area, so you need the enemies to be stuck to hit multiple ones. And each 4th attack deals more damage. The special attack of the one-handed spear is a jab, which reduces the movement speed of the enemy by 50%, and also reduces the health regeneration for 8 seconds. As you can see, it's pretty weak. It does less damage than the first normal attack of the spear. The two-handed spear, or the polearm, works in a similar way. It is a bit slower, but it does a lot more damage. You have 3 normal attacks followed by a stronger attack, which to be honest, doesn't look like an attack that you can perform with the spear. Maybe they mixed up the sword and the spear animations. The special attack of the two-handed spear is a thrust, which is similar to the jab of the one-handed version, but it does a lot more damage. I covered the magical weapons in my video about magic, link is in the description. The magic weapons don't have active spells that you can cast like the armor does, they have only passive on-hit effects. Like I said in that video, some of the on-hit effects are really good for PvP, but for PvE I prefer to use normal weapons, mostly because the weapons break down much faster than the armor does. And all the precious tattered sigils or crimson relic leashes that were used to make that weapon are going down the drain when the weapon has no lifetime and durability left. But some of the magic weapons have good abilities for PvE as well. Aggressor and Trapper are less valuable, but the other 5 could be very useful indeed. The magical weapons don't have a special look though, not yet at least, compared to the magical armor I've shown in my previous video. So which weapon should you use? As long as you're not trying to be Legolas and use the bow, all melee weapons should serve you well. It depends on your personal preference. My own weapon of choice currently is the two-handed mace, at least when I'm not leading dungeons. In that occasion, I'm stuck with the bow most of the time, I'm afraid. Since the spears are the cheapest weapon to make, many of the people who leveled their weaponsmithing skill have a lot of high-level spears lying around. I have them as well. Even though I discarded like 90% of the spears I made, you can see that I still have a lot of them in my redeeming queue. So if you want a cheap weapon for free, you probably can get a high-level spear from people who leveled their weaponsmithing skills. This is it for this video. It's my longest one yet, and it covers a topic that will definitely change several times during the development of the game. But hey, I can always make a new combat and weapons guide. I have a few more videos planned for the near future, so stay tuned. You can check the other guides on this channel, like the ones popping on the screen now. Check the description below for some useful Pax Dei links and also links to my Twitch and my second YouTube channels. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.